Okay, here we go. Quick sensor test. On a GT-40, ignore my cutoff wiring. I'm converting this thing to an MS3, so that's in the middle of the process. But I just wanted to explain the sensors here. We have a couple of sensors. One's down here. This is just for the gauge in the front, so it has nothing to do with the engine running. These ones are here for the limp mode. This is a heat sensor, that's a switch. It will switch to ground if the engine gets too hot. There's another one down where the oil pressure sensor does the opposite. If there is zero pressure, it is a short. If there is more than 5 psi oil pressure, it's an open. This guy here, this one here is our engine ECT, engine coolant temperature, and this is the air intake temperature. You can see it goes into the intake manifold. And these are the important ones. And then back here, we will get to this one later. Down here is the map sensor that is usually connected to the vacuum. I took this off so you can see this better. So let's start. Let's start with the limp sensor. This one is open unless it's hotter than, I believe, 200 degrees. So if we measure into it, we see something less than 1 ohm. This is not because the sensor is more than 200 degrees. This is because this is parallel to the oil pressure sensor, and the oil pressure is lower than 5 psi because the engine is not running. So measuring this one here, we should measure something like less than an ohm to ground. I'm measuring to ground. If you're in doubt about the limp modes, you can just disconnect them both. The engine should run fine. Okay, the next one. Oh, let's do one more thing here. So if we switch to volt, we shall see 0 volt. If I turn the ignition on, it's also 0 volt, and the red light in the desk is on. It's the check engine light. So there we go, 0 volt. Turn the engine back off. Now to the next. This is the engine temperature, engine coolant temperature. Sits in the coolant up here, 2 pins. One's ground, the other one's coming from the ECU. So the first thing I want to make sure it has a good ground. So I'm going to still measure in resistance. Voltmeter set to ohm. And go in here, it's the left one, the gray cable. And as we can see, it's less than 1 ohm. So I have a good ground. On the other pin, I should get 5 volt from the engine controller. But in order to get this, switch to volt, I have to turn the ignition on. Ignition on, there we go. 5.9 volt, as expected. Turn the ignition back off. So the sensor itself is a resistor that changes resistance with temperature. It's about 80 degrees right now. So I'm going to take this off, switch back to ohm, and just measure the resistance of this guy here by going in there. And as we can see, it's 31 kilo ohms. This depends on temperature, so. And you can, I believe there's a table within the PrpBoss manual. Okay, so now we can plug this one back in. That's all I'm gonna do now. If unsure, we could also measure the voltage. I don't know if let me try this to see if I can get in there. I don't want to poke through the cable if I don't have to. So my ground goes back here. I switch back to volt. Turn the ignition on. See if I can, the green one would be the one that I have to measure. So if I poke in here, yeah, there it is. So there we go. So now it's not 5 volt anymore, it's 4.5. This means my ETC is okay. So ignition back off. Now we're going to do the same thing for the next sensor over here. First, I'm going to hook up back up to find the ground. Switching back to ohm. Find the ground. 2.9 kilo ohm, that's not it. So the other one's the ground on this one here. 0.3, I can't, the color, I believe it's a dark, I think it's kind of a brownish color. Okay, that's our ground, we have ground. And the other one, same thing, should have 5 volt with the ignition on. 0 right now, ignition on, 5 volt. I'm gonna plug that back in. Can hopefully do the same thing. It's a little tough to get to this one here. Go in here, turn the ignition on. That must be the wrong side. Or the other side. There it is, 4.5 volt. And these two should be roughly the same, somewhere around 4.5 volt at 80 degrees right now. It's pretty hot here today. Okay, 2 sensors. So now the map sensor. map sensor is up here. It's hooked up to the vacuum. This goes to the vacuum, which is underneath the intake manifold. There's only one hose. It goes somewhere over there. Okay, let me make sure you guys can see this one. Yeah, so this thing should also have a ground, plus 5 volt, but the output is hertz. So first thing I'm gonna do again, go to my ohm, hook to ground, check for the ground. Can't get into this one here. See if I can get in from the back. I think it's the bottom one. So there we go. The bottom one is ground. I know the top one is plus. I'll turn the ignition back on again. Ignition is still on. There we go. There's our plus 5 volt. That makes the center the output. The output's a bit funky because it comes out as frequency. So I'm going to plug in here, and my fancy tester here. So DC voltage is 2.5. I don't know if that's any indication. However, we got to switch this thing. There we go. So now, yeah, 100. You can see 157 hertz, and if I add some vacuum, we can see a change. So that means my map sensor is okay too. Okay, so now we're gonna see if we can go a little higher here so we can see this better. See my change the camera angle a little to do the. And this is as good as it gets. I can't get these reflections off. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna test this one with the ignition on. So we're gonna turn the ignition on. We got 3 connections here. So the green one's the output. The orange one is plus 5. There it is. This is really kind of tricky to find there, but you got to find the contact, otherwise you have to push a needle through the cable. Okay, the orange one is 5 volt, the black one is 0, and the green one's the output. And as we can, the output should, there it is. Slowly, I lost it. Let's do this again. .7 volt in idle, and now I'm throttling it up, and we can see the voltage slowly comes up. Still going here, and full throttle is 4.2. Okay, going back slowly back down, and we can see the voltage dropping back down. 0.7. There we go. That's the whole test. Thanks for watching.